Hello, my name is Colton Hibbert and wanted to make a video covering a project that I built for a company called Jill's Office, and wanted to cover the technologies that I used and what my role and responsibility was for the project. So Jill's Office is a business that is basically a call center, and they actually handle scheduling and client relations for other small businesses. So basically what happens is people will sign up for Jill's Office, and then they will basically act as a call center for these small businesses and take care of the customers. So my job and my responsibility was actually to work with another developer in rewriting basically their old application, and their old app was built with Ruby on Rails. And they wanted to move away from that. They wanted to move to all 100% JavaScript. So basically JavaScript on the back end with Node.js, and then they wanted to do some different things on the front end. And so my specific task was just to do the sign up process, to get everything from all of the customer fields being filled out, to handling a Stripe payment, and also getting the person signing up for the service. They needed to get set up with the Twilio account. Twilio basically handles phone services like online, so they need a Twilio number and a Twilio account, and so those are some of the things that needed to happen, and then all that information needs to get correctly stored in the database. So I basically did this all from A to Z, and again, my specific task was just working with the sign process. So some of the technologies that we used for the project would be Let.html. It's a front-end framework, fairly similar to React, lets you render JSX, or similar to Vue, lets you render JSX. So Let.html used the native web components in the browser, and so we used the native web components, lifecycle methods, and then we used just pure Redux for state management on the front end. We also used GraphQL to send queries and send the information from the front end to the back end. And some other technologies that were used on the back end, again, GraphQL, Node.js, Express.js framework for the server, and then Prisma ORM was utilized to set up the queries, all the SQL queries, and then Postgres database. So that's the gist of the project and the tech stack. So right here we see the first page of the sign up. We just fill all these out, and it takes you to the next page. Something that we actually utilized was local storage, just to remember if the customer refreshed or anything like that. It would save all of the information except for the passwords, because that would not be secure, so we did not do that. But if I click refresh here, it'll save everything but the passwords. So that's pretty nifty. Let's go ahead and fill these out real quick and move on to the next page. And so they'll select a service plan. I'm just going to go ahead and click professional here. We move on to next, and then we see a lot of the additional owner information that needs to be filled out. I've already taken the liberty of doing that to spare you guys the pain of seeing me fill all of this out. But basically what happens is all this information gets filled out. They click finish, and what will happen is a GraphQL request is sent to the server with all this information. And what basically has to happen is on the server, there's this thing called a resolver, which is basically a function, and it takes the request and it says, okay, got all this information, and we basically, the next step that we have to do is we have to set up a Stripe token for the customer. And so that Stripe token gets set up, and then this information after the Stripe token says, hey, Stripe token set up for the customer, sends a request back here to the front end. And then a sign-up modal for Stripe will appear, so they can submit a payment, and that that happens in the Flash pretty much instantaneously. And then from there, they'll submit the Stripe payment, and then that will get submitted. And as well on the back end, there are additional resolvers for GraphQL. Again, these functions, and so all the information needs to be logged to the database. A ton of fields need to be logged to the database, so that's all taken care of. And then also the Twilio account needs to be set up, and so that's set up there as well. They get a Twilio number, and then all that information is logged and stored and saved on the database. So there's a lot more code on the back end as well. And then A lot of code here on the front end. We used TypeScript as well on the front end and the back end. So, you know, our store of data has types, and all the actions have types. So everything's typed statically. And then in regards to actual code itself, this repo is private, so I can't show you the code, but that gives you the gist of, you know, what the project is and all the different things that I did to get this process completed from A to Z. Some of the challenges that I had for this project were making sure I correctly logged all the information to the database again the second time around, because the old app was built with Ruby on Rails. I had to basically go through and read all the old Ruby on Rails code, and it was a total Frankenstein app. It was done okay. A lot of parts were done okay, but other parts were not, because it was put together by a team of devs that were contracted out. So some of the app was a little shaky, shaky at best, you could say. And so difficulties were, you know, reading the old Ruby on Rails code, finding where, you know, all the controllers, because Ruby uses a MVC model. So I had to be able to go and understand that and how it works, and then make sure that all that information gets correctly logged to the database, just like how it was before, without any missing fields, and had to make sure that all the actions were submitted correctly again, like getting the Twilio set up and the Stripe set up. So yeah, that's the gist of the project. Again, my name was Colton Hibbert, and thank you for watching.